The Starliner Odyssey was a vessel of quiet purpose, a needle of polished human alloy stitching together the disparate quadrants of the known galaxy. Within its corridors, the air was a carefully managed symphony of recycled oxygen and serene anticipation. Its mission was the grandest undertaking in human history, the final leg of a diplomatic tour to formalize the Galactic Concordance, a coalition of sentient species founded on the principles of mutual understanding and peaceful coexistence. For this journey, humanity had been chosen as the final destination, the capstone of the entire endeavor. Its most esteemed passenger was Lyran, emissary of the Kalan. His people were the architects of the Concordance, a species whose evolution had culminated not in sharper claws or thicker hides, but in the chorus. It was a Gestalt consciousness, a perpetual, silent symphony of shared thought and emotion. For a Kalan, to be alone was a theoretical concept, like a color they could not perceive. Deceit was a physical pain, a dissonant chord that rippled through the whole of their society. Lyran's own form was elegant and deceptively simple. A tall, slender biped with opalescent skin that shifted in color with the flow of the chorus. His face was smooth, featureless save for two large, liquid black eyes that seemed to drink in the light of the universe. He did not speak with a mouth, but with thought, his every intention flowing directly into the minds of those around him, a sensation most species described as hearing a warm, resonant voice inside their own heads. He sat now in the observation lounge with the human delegation, watching the cosmic dust swirl outside the panoramic viewport. Beside him was Ambassador Eva Rostova, a woman whose mind was a fascinating, if perplexing, place. It was a fortress of carefully curated thoughts, arias of diplomatic pleasantries playing over a foundation of tightly controlled something. Lyran couldn't quite identify it. It wasn't a secret, not in the malicious sense he was beginning to understand from studying human history. It was more like a vast, private library to which he was not permitted entry. He found it charming, a unique quirk of a species still mastering the art of the shared self. Next destination, Kalos, will be an experience for you, Ambassador, Lyran projected, his thought voice a gentle hum. The chorus can be overwhelming for minds accustomed to solitude. Eva smiled, a genuine, warm expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She was a woman in her late 50s, with silver tracing her dark hair and a weariness that her professional poise could not entirely conceal. We are honored beyond words, Emissary. To be the first humans to experience the chorus, it's a moment our whole species has dreamed of. A few paces away, a monolith in a severe black uniform was Security Chief Marcus Thorne. His mind was even more fortified than Rostova's. It was a citadel, all granite walls and watchful sentinels. Where Rostova's mind had libraries, Thorne's had armories. The dominant thought Lyran could perceive from him was a constant, low-level thrum of assessment. Threat, asset, trajectory, control. It was not hostile, merely vigilant. My people have prepared a welcome, Lyran continued, turning his gaze to Thorne. There will be no need for your vigilance, Chief Thorne. Kalos has no concept of physical threat. Gave a curt, respectful nod. All the same, Emissary, it's my job to be vigilant even when there's nothing to be vigilant against. It's a human thing. A human thing. Lyran had found that phrase to be a common refrain. It was used to explain everything from their peculiar love of rhythmic, percussive music to their bafflingly inefficient system of individual, enclosed living spaces. Every species had its quirks, of course. It was what made this journey so endlessly fascinating. Their first stop, months ago, had been Glyptos, the home of the Glypt. They were a silicon-based species, living geological formations that communicated through precisely modulated seismic vibrations and slow, deliberate shifts in their crystalline structures. Their world was a masterpiece of patience, a planet of towering rock spires carved by wind over millennia into breathtaking sculptures. The Glypt themselves, some as large as hills, perceived time on a scale that made human lives seem like the frantic buzzing of a mayfly. Their leader, Ulorith, a being of pure, unblemished quartz, had spent 3 full rotations of Glyptos, nearly a human week, formulating a single greeting. We perceive, your haste, it had rumbled through the soles of their boots. It is a marvel, like a river in flood, destructive yet possessed of a strange and potent beauty. We are eager to see the world that shaped such fleeting, brilliant things. The Glypt saw humanity's rapid technological ascent and short lifespans as two sides of the same coin. A fire that burned furiously bright but was destined to extinguish itself just as quickly. They were logical to a fault, their philosophy an extension of geology. What is stable endures. What is volatile crumbles. They had examined the data packets on human art and science and were deeply impressed, but they eagerly awaited their visit to Earth to understand the bedrock upon which such a frantic, vibrant culture was built. Next had been Vexus Prime, a tidally locked moon orbiting a gas giant, a world of perpetual twilight and dense, bioluminescent jungles. It was home to the Vexian, a species of apex predators. The contrast with the Glypt could not have been more stark. The Vexian were tall, corded with muscle, and covered in chitinous plates the color of dried blood. They lived by a strict, honor-bound code of the hunt. Everything was a matter of strength, respect, and the clean kill. Their leader, Cathar of the Bloodwind clan, had met them not in a palace, but in a clearing, the air thick with the scent of alien blossoms and decay. He had assessed Thorn with his multifaceted eyes and offered a gesture of respect, a slow, deliberate baring of the mandibles on his left side. "Security Chief has the stillness of a hunter," Cathar had spoken, his voice a series of guttural clicks and chitters translated by the ship's computer. "He knows how to wait. He carries the scent of controlled violence. It is a good scent." Thorn, to his credit, had simply met the predator's gaze. "It's an honor to be recognized by a fellow professional chieftain." Cathar had been fascinated by the concept of human soldiers. "You have warriors who do not hunt for sustenance. They wage war over ideas and territory when your world is not yet fully tamed. This is a logic I do not grasp, but I respect the strength it must forge. I wish to see the crucible that creates such warriors. We will come to your Earth and see the proving grounds of your people." Now, they were arriving at Kalos, Lyran's home. The ship slid from hyperspace into a bath of soft, lavender light. Kalos was a world of immense, crystalline forests that pulsed with a gentle, internal luminescence. Great rivers of what looked like liquid light flowed between continents of shimmering, pearlescent land. There were no cities, no structures as humans would understand them. The Kalan were their cities, their homes, their society, all woven together in the seamless tapestry of the chorus. As Rostova and Thorn followed Lyran onto the teleportation pad, he sent a final, preparatory thought. "Prepare yourselves. You are about to join a symphony 60 billion years in the making." The moment of arrival on Kalos was not a physical sensation, but a mental one. For Eva Rostova, it was as if the walls of her mind dissolved. Suddenly, she was not just Eva. She was part of a boundless, benevolent whole. She felt the serene curiosity of a billion Kalan turning to greet her, the ancient, quiet satisfaction of the crystal trees drinking in the starlight, the joyful, simple bliss of a young Kalan experiencing a new color for the first time. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of pure empathy. Tears streamed down her face, not of sorrow, but of a belonging so profound it eclipsed every lonely moment of her life. For Marcus Thorn, the experience was a violation. The walls of his citadel were breached, his sentinels disarmed, his armories thrown open. The absolute lack of aggression, of suspicion, of any kind of vigilance in the chorus was deeply unnerving. It felt undefended, unsafe. He felt the Kalan's gentle confusion at his own mental state, the tightly coiled spring of readiness, the constant hum of risk analysis. They bathed it in a wave of soothing calm, an attempt to heal a wound they could not comprehend. He gritted his teeth, feeling exposed and vulnerable in a way no physical threat had ever made him feel. Lyran felt their reactions and guided them. To Rostova, he sent a current of welcome, helping her find her footing in the great ocean of thought. To Thorn, he sent a feeling of reassurance, a promise of safety that the security chief's mind struggled to accept. "This is my people," Lyran projected, his thought voice now part of the greater chorus, amplified by a billion harmonious minds. "This is our world. Welcome, humans." They spent what felt like an eternity and a moment on Kalos. They walked through groves of singing crystal, learned the history of the Kalan not from books but by experiencing the memories of the entire species, and shared in a collective meditation that spanned the globe. Rostova felt a peace that she knew would haunt her for the rest of her life, a standard of serenity Earth could never meet. Thorn, though he never fully relaxed, began to understand. The Kalen's strength wasn't in walls or weapons, but in their absolute unity. To harm one was to harm all, not just emotionally, but literally. An act of violence would be a psychic cataclysm, a shard of glass in the heart of the chorus. During a final communion before their departure, the assembled consciousness of the Kalen turned its focus to the future. A wave of gentle, eager curiosity flowed towards Rostova. Your world, Earth, we have seen the art you have shared, the mathematics, the music of your composer, Bach. It is a thing of sublime, intricate logic. It is a mind reaching for a chorus of its own. We long to see the home of such beauty. We long to feel the harmony of the people who created it. Eva Rostova's heart ached. She thought of the soaring symphonies, the elegant equations, the breathtaking art, and she felt a swell of pride. That was humanity. But beneath that pride was a cold, sinking stone of dread. The chorus saw the single, perfect cathedral spire, but not the bloody ground upon which it was built. You will, she promised, her voice thick with emotion. You will see it all. The journey to Earth was the final leg. The delegation was now complete. Aboard the Odyssey were Lyran of the Kalen, the silent emissary, Ulorith of the Glypt, a smaller, mobile version of its greater self, resembling a multi-ton, intricately carved geode that glided on a suspensor field, and Cathar of the Vexian, his chitinous plates gleaming under the ship's lights. The mood was one of supreme excitement. They had shared their worlds, their philosophies, their very beings. Now they would see the home of these fascinating, paradoxical humans, the brilliant, hasty, creative, vigilant species that sat at the center of this new concordance. They gathered in the observation lounge as the Odyssey made its final approach. Earth swam into view, a swirl of brilliant blue, stark white, and verdant green. It was by any measure a jewel. It is vibrant, Ulorith rumbled, the sound a low, resonant hum from its crystalline form. So much liquid water, so much atmospheric flux, a geologically volatile and complex system. The life that springs from such a cradle must be equally complex. Cathar's mandibles clicked softly. A good world for the hunt. Diverse biomes, mountains, forests, oceans. A strong species would have many challenges to overcome, many opportunities to prove its worth. Lyran remained silent, his large black eyes fixed on the planet. He extended his senses, cautiously this time, trying to feel the psychic tenor of this world. He had expected to feel something. A nascent chorus, perhaps, like the one he'd sensed in Bach's music, billions of individual minds, separate but capable of harmonizing. What he felt instead was a scream. It was not a sound, but a psychic torrent of such staggering chaos that he physically recoiled. It was a billion dissonant notes played at once, a wall of raw, unfiltered, and utterly isolated consciousness. It was the shriek of rage, the gnawing acid of envy, the cold, sharp point of fear, the hollow ache of loneliness, the hot flush of lust, the bitter grit of resentment. And beneath it all, threaded through everything like a bloody cord, was a constant, predatory hunger, not just for food, but for status, for power, for dominance. He felt the collective Kalen chorus shudder, billions of light years away, as the echo of his shock reached them. A wave of concern, of pure, unadulterated confusion flowed back to him. What is that pain? What is that noise? Rostova saw the tremor that ran through Lyran's form. Emissary, are you all right? Lyran could not form a thought response. He could only stare at the beautiful, terrible world hanging in the void, the source of the most appalling psychic pain he had ever encountered. Thorn glanced from Lyran to the planet and back again, a flicker of something, understanding, grim satisfaction in his eyes. Welcome to Earth, Emissary, he said, his voice flat. The noise takes some getting used to. The landing was scheduled for Geneva, a city chosen for its history of diplomacy and relative calm. But to the alien delegation, the concept of calm on Earth was a horrifying misnomer. As the shuttle descended, the psychic chaos intensified. Lyran had to retreat deep within himself, creating a mental shield that felt brittle and inadequate. It was the first time in his existence he had ever had to intentionally silence the input of others, and the act felt like a deep spiritual wound. Ulorith's sensors were overwhelmed by a different kind of data. The sheer density of competing electromagnetic signals, the chaotic chemical composition of the atmosphere thick with industrial byproducts, the frantic, disordered movement of millions of vehicles on the ground below. Illogical, it vibrated. There is no system, no overarching pattern. It is the movement of panicked microbes in a petri dish. Cathar was the most outwardly composed, but his senses were equally assaulted. The air, filtered through the shuttle systems, still carried the chemical tang of fear. Not the clean, sharp fear of prey before a hunter, but a rancid, low-grade, pervasive anxiety. It was the scent of a herd that was constantly and needlessly spooked. They disembarked into a controlled diplomatic terminal, but the buffer was not enough. The sounds hit them first. The distant, jarring wail of a siren. The impatient roar of a jet engine. The cacophony of 100 different human conversations, none harmonizing, all competing for sonic space. Eva Rostova's face was a mask of professional hospitality, but Lyran could feel the frantic energy radiating from her as she tried to manage the unmanageable. This way, honored guests, we have prepared accommodations for you at the Palais des Nations. Their first guided tour was to a museum of human history. Rostova's intent was to showcase humanity's journey, its climb from primitivism to enlightenment. It had the opposite effect. Ulorith drifted before a display of medieval armor. This construction is crude, but its purpose is clear. It is designed to stop sharpened metal propelled by muscle. You spent centuries devising ways to pierce each other's flesh more efficiently. The expenditure of energy is staggering. For what long-term gain? The territory conquered by these beings was lost within a generation. The logical, geological mind of the Glypt could not process the sheer, glorious futility of it all. Cathar examined a row of firearms behind reinforced glass. His head tilted. "These are not hunters' tools," he chittered, the translator rendering it as a dry, analytical tone. "The projectiles are too small. The aim is for injury, for incapacitation, not a clean kill. And so many. You built machines to kill each other from a distance. There is no strength tested, no spirit judged, no honor in such a kill." He looked at Thorn. "This is the crucible of your warriors, pressing a button." Thorn's expression was hard. "The goal isn't honor, chieftain, it's victory." "Without honor is just butchery," Cathar replied, a note of genuine disgust in his voice. For Lyran, the museum was a house of ghosts. He didn't see artifacts, he felt them. He felt the terror of the person who had worn that armor as a sword came crashing down. He felt the cold, methodical intent of the person who had designed that rifle. He felt the echoes of pain, of suffering, of loss, clinging to every object like a psychic shroud. He had to brace himself against a display case, his opalescent skin flickering a sickly gray. The chorus was a universe away, and he was drowning in an ocean of silent screams. The turning point came not in a museum of war, but in a quiet, curated viewing room. Rostova, desperate to salvage the visit, decided to show them what she thought was the best of humanity, its connection with its own world. She chose to screen a highly acclaimed nature documentary. It was a film celebrated for its stunning cinematography and dramatic storytelling. The screen lit up with a scene of breathtaking beauty, an African savanna under a golden sun. A herd of gazelles grazed peacefully. The alien delegation watched, a moment of respite from the city's chaos. Then the narrator's voice, deep and resonant, spoke of the eternal drama. A lioness appeared, moving with fluid grace through the tall grass. Cathar watched, his posture approving. A proper hunt, the stalk is patient. The choice of target is precise, the young, the slow. It is the way. But then the camera zoomed in, the music swelled with dramatic tension, and the hunt began. It was not presented as a simple act of sustenance. It was framed as a brutal, thrilling spectacle. The gazelle's panic, the lioness's savage power, the final, bloody takedown, it was all captured in visceral, slow-motion detail. And then, the most shocking part. The documentary cut to the human filmmakers, who spoke with passionate awe about witnessing the raw, beautiful power of nature. They praised the lioness's lethality. They romanticized the struggle. Lyran felt a wave of absolute nausea. The Kaelin understood predation as a biological necessity, a function of the ecosystem. But to enjoy it, to spectate, to turn the terror and death of a fellow living being into, Entertainment, Ulorith vibrated with a low, troubled frequency. The logic is flawed. You are not the predator. You are not the prey. Yet you watch the transfer of energy from one to the other and derive pleasure. This is an input for which I have no processing framework. It was Cathar who finally articulated the horror. His head snapped towards Rostova, his mandibles clicking in agitation. You watch this for amusement," he demanded. "The fear of the weak, the death of the hunted, this is your recreation. To observe a kill in which you have no stake," Rostova was stunned. "It's its nature, it's considered beautiful, the circle of life. That is not the circle of life." Cathar's voice was sharp with contempt. "That is a voyeuristic spectacle of death. We Vexian kill, we hunt. It is our nature, but we take no pleasure in the terror of our prey. There is grim necessity, there is respect for the fallen who will sustain us. But this is a sickness of the soul." The dam had broken. The carefully constructed facade of human culture crumbled into dust. That night, the delegation exercised its diplomatic prerogative to access the unfiltered human information network. Rostova's desperate pleas for them to allow her to continue guiding them were politely, but firmly, denied. What they found was an abyss. Ulorith, the being of pure logic, spent hours processing economic data. It saw systems designed to create artificial scarcity. It saw billions of beings living in poverty on a planet of immense resources. It saw the planned obsolescence of goods, the monumental waste, the illogical destruction of the planetary habitat for short-term profit. It is a system designed for self-termination, it concluded, the thought a cold, hard diamond of fact. They are burning their own foundation to warm themselves for a single night. Cathar, the honorable predator, delved into human history and entertainment. He saw wars fought not for survival, but for ideology, for religion, for pride. He saw genocides, torture, purges. He saw fictional media that didn't just depict violence but fetishized it. Gratuitous, meaningless cruelty presented as heroism. He watched a single film, a popular action movie, and was left visibly shaken. "They killed hundreds," he chittered to Thorn, who had been sent to their suite as a liaison. "The hero to save one. The waste, the dishonor, he took no care, he reveled in the destruction. Your people cheer for this manic butcher." Thorn leaned against the wall, his face grim. "He's the good guy. He's fighting the bad guys." "Are the same." Cathar slammed a clawed hand against the table, cracking the synthetic wood. "They differ only in their stated justification. The methods are identical. This is not strength. This is madness." Lyran did not need to access the network. He simply opened his mind. He let the raw, unfiltered psychic static of the city wash over him. He felt it all. The man in the apartment below, beating his wife in a drunken rage. The woman 2 streets over, dying alone of a disease because she could not afford the medicine. The child crying from hunger. The broker celebrating a market turn that had beggared thousands. The casual cruelty of a boss firing an employee. The seething resentment of a driver cut off in traffic. It was a billion private hells, all burning in close proximity, each mind a fortress protecting its own misery, its own petty hatreds, its own selfish desires. He finally understood the silence in Rostova's and Thorn's minds. It wasn't privacy. It was a shield. It was a necessity. If humans felt what he was feeling, if they were truly open to one another, the sheer agony would shatter their civilization in an instant. Humanity was not a nascent chorus. It was a species that had evolved to be deaf to itself, lest it be driven mad by the sound of its own soul. The final confrontation was not angry. It was funereal. The 3 aliens sat opposite Rostova and Thorn in the sterile luxury of their diplomatic suite. The air was thick with the weight of unspoken horrors. "We will be concluding our visit," Lyran projected. His thought voice was no longer warm or resonant. It was flat, cold, like the vacuum between worlds. "We have seen enough." Eva Rostova looked broken. The professional veneer was gone, leaving only a woman of deep, profound shame. "Emissary, please, what you've seen, it's not all we are. There is love, there is sacrifice, there is art and beauty." "We have seen your beauty," Ulorith rumbled. "It is a flower growing on a landfill, a logical inconsistency. It is real, but it is overshadowed by the sheer, irrational scale of the decay from which it springs." "We thank you for your candor," Lyran continued, his black eyes fixed on Rostova. You did not lie to us, you simply omitted. We now understand why. Thorn, who had been silent, finally spoke, his voice low and defensive. Everything you find so horrifying, our aggression, our competition, our brutality, that's what got us here. It's what drove us out of the caves, what pushed us to build and innovate and fight our way to the stars. Your gentle cultures, with all due respect, you waited for the universe to come to you. We came to it. Was Cathar who responded. He rose to his full height, an intimidating sight. He walked over to Thorn, not with aggression but with a terrifying, analytical calm. "We Vexian are predators," he said, his voice a low growl. "We believed you were too. We were wrong. A predator kills for need. It culls the weak to strengthen the herd. It maintains the balance. It respects the spirit of its prey. It is a vital part of the living world." He leaned closer, his multifaceted eyes boring into Thorn's. "You are not predators, you are a pestilence. You prey on the weak, you prey on the strong, you prey on yourselves. You kill for sport, for pleasure, for abstract concepts. You waste everything. You honor nothing. You do not maintain a balance. You shatter it. There is a grudging respect I might hold for a worthy rival, a strong hunter." Cathar straightened up, a gesture of profound dismissal. "For you, I feel only a deep biological horror. I have seen parasites that are more honorable than your species. At least they are honest about their nature." The silence that followed was absolute. Rostova bowed her head, her shoulders shaking. Thorn stood his ground, but the remark had struck him like a physical blow. Before they departed, Lyran requested a final moment alone with a piece of human art. They took him to an empty concert hall, where a single, ancient piano sat on the stage. A human musician had been summoned. Lyran did not ask for a performance. He simply approached the instrument and gently laid a slender hand on the polished wood. He closed his eyes. He wanted to feel it one last time, the echo of the thing that had so captivated the chorus. He felt the history of the instrument, the hands that had played it, the emotions poured into its strings. He felt the sublime mathematical purity of Bach, the passionate chaos of Beethoven, the quiet melancholy of Chopin. It was all there, the harmony, the logic, the beauty, but now he could feel the context. He could feel the composer's lonely struggle, the patron's vanity, the audience's fickle applause, the bloody history of the nation that produced the artist. The beauty wasn't separate from the ugliness. It was born of it, a desperate, defiant cry against the screaming chaos of its own creators. It was a beauty that could only exist because of the profound ugliness it sought to transcend. The journey back from Earth was a silent one. Ulorith, Cathar, and Lyran sat in the observation lounge of the Odyssey, watching the blue marble recede until it was just another point of light. The Galactic Concordance was a fact, but the spirit of it felt like a lie. "My report to the Glipt Conclave will be a study in paradox," Ulorith finally rumbled. "A species of brilliant engineers who are systematically dismantling their own life support system. A species of profound logicians in their science, who live by a social code of pure chaos. It is a problem with no solution. Will tell my people that the galaxy holds a creature more dangerous than any hunter," Cathar chittered, his gaze distant. "A hunter with no code. And I will advise that we treat them as such." Lyran said nothing. He had not projected a single thought since leaving Earth. He felt hollowed out. The psychic shield he had erected was still there, a thin, fragile wall he was now afraid to lower. He had brought a piece of Earth back with him, the silence, the isolation, the knowledge of an abyss so deep that it could stare back. When he finally returned to Kalos, the chorus rushed to greet him, a wave of love and concern and a billion questions. "What did you see? What did you feel? Why is there a wall in your mind, brother?" Lyran stood on the shimmering, crystalline plains of his home, surrounded by the perfect harmony of his people. He tried to open himself to them to rejoin the symphony. But he could not. The memory of the scream was too loud. He looked at his kin, at their beautiful, innocent, unified minds, and he understood his new burden. How do you describe a color that no one has ever seen, especially when that color is the color of blood and despair? How do you explain the concept of a lie to a people for whom truth is the very air they breathe? He had gone to Earth to complete the concordance, to unite the galaxy in a shared chorus. He had returned as the sole guardian of a terrible, solitary truth, that in the grand, silent symphony of the cosmos, There was one world that was not singing. It was screaming, and he was the only one who had truly heard it. The emissary of the Kalan stood amidst the perfect harmony of his people, and for the first time in his life, felt utterly and completely alone. The concordance was formed, but its future was now a terrifying, unanswered question, hanging in the silence he could no longer escape.